Have you ever noticed how the harder you try not to think about someone, the more they seem to appear? It almost feels unfair. You wake up determined that today will be different. You tell yourself you're finally moving on. You'll stay busy, focus on work, spend time with friends, maybe even convince yourself they've become just another chapter of your life. And then, without warning, they're there again. A song, a familiar place, a random smell, or sometimes absolutely nothing at all. Their face simply appears in your mind as if your brain had been quietly waiting for the perfect moment to remind you they once existed. Most people immediately assume this means they're still in love. But that's not necessarily true. In fact, one of the biggest misunderstandings about the human mind is believing that recurring thoughts always reveal hidden feelings. They don't. Sometimes they reveal unfinished patterns. Your brain was never designed to simply forget people who once mattered. From an evolutionary perspective, remembering emotionally significant experiences helped humans survive. The people we trusted, the people who hurt us, the people who changed our lives, all became valuable information for the future. The problem is that your brain doesn't always know when something belongs in the past. It keeps checking the file. It keeps reopening the memory. Not because it enjoys making you suffer, but because somewhere deep inside, it still isn't convinced the story is over. And here's where things become even stranger. Memory doesn't work like a video recording. Every single time you remember someone, your brain rebuilds that memory from scratch. That means you're never remembering the exact moment. You're remembering your last reconstruction of it. And with every reconstruction, tiny details change. The arguments slowly lose their sharp edges. The disappointments become quieter. But the moments that made you feel safe, those often become brighter than they really were. Without realizing it, your own mind begins polishing the past. Not because it wants to lie to you, because certainty is easier to carry than complexity. That's why people often miss someone they once couldn't stop complaining about. Not because the relationship was perfect, but because the memory slowly becomes simpler than reality ever was. Then another question appears. If your memories aren't perfectly accurate, who are you actually missing? Is it really that person? Or could it be the version of yourself that only existed when they were around? Think about it. Maybe you felt more confident. Maybe you laughed more easily. Maybe your future seemed predictable. Those emotions became attached to one face. So after they're gone, your brain makes a quiet assumption. If I want those feelings back, I must need that person back. But emotions don't belong to people. People simply become associated with them. That's an important difference. Because once you realize that, you stop chasing someone else and start rebuilding the parts of yourself you thought disappeared with them. There's another reason those thoughts keep showing up, and it has nothing to do with love. It has everything to do with expectation. For weeks, months, maybe even years, your brain learned a rhythm, checking your phone, sharing good news, saying goodnight, making plans. Those routines quietly became automatic. When the relationship ended, the person disappeared overnight. The habit didn't. Your mind still reaches for patterns that no longer exist, just like someone instinctively reaching for a light switch after moving into a different house. The hand moves before the brain catches up. Thoughts work the same way. Which is why suddenly remembering someone doesn't automatically mean your heart wants them back. Sometimes your brain is simply following yesterday's map inside today's world. And that's a completely different thing. This is also why trying to force yourself not to think about them almost never works. The human mind has an interesting habit. The more urgently you tell yourself not to think about something, the more attention your brain gives it. Not because it's trying to punish you, because it assumes anything you're fighting this hard must be important. So instead of asking, how do I stop thinking about them? A better question might be, what part of my life still feels unfinished? Sometimes the answer isn't the relationship. Sometimes it's loneliness. Sometimes it's regret. Sometimes it's the future you imagined that never happened. And once you begin healing that deeper wound, the person who kept appearing inside your thoughts slowly loses their role. One day, you'll realize something almost impossible to notice while you're still hurting. You didn't wake up and magically forget them. You simply stopped needing the story your mind kept replaying. Their memory may still visit from time to time, but it no longer controls your emotions. It no longer decides your future. And that's probably the biggest sign you've truly moved on. Not because they disappeared from your mind, but because they no longer define who you are becoming.